Good afternoon. My name is Christoph Miguel A. Villana from BSIT, and today we're going to be talking about authentication and access control. So, first things first, we're going to start off with authentication. So, what is authentication? Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of an individual or system or entity attempting to access a particular resource, service, or system. This ensures that only authorized users gain access to protected information or functionalities, and this is the fundamental aspect to cybersecurity and digital security. Now, what is it used for? This is used to protect data, functions from unauthorized source or entities, ensuring the safety of the original user or owner. It is used in many systems such as Windows, Mac, mobile phones, Linux, etc., even on banks, networks, and many more. And to explain this, we're going to be talking about authentication factors. Now, for the first factor, there are three main factors, and these are mostly used in everyday life or even companies. So, first things first, the one factor that we all know is this knowledge factor. It is based on the user's knowledge on how they unlock systems. This is via passwords, security questions, or pins. So this is basically what the user knows and how they can unlock the system. So it's easy to set up. So that's the pros of it, and it's user friendly. The only problem is that it can be breached by forcing or key logging, and sometimes, since I'm also a forgetful person, user memory issue. So people can tend to forget their pins or security questions, and that's one of the cons to it. The next factor is possession factor. It is a key device that a user possesses to access or unlock a system. This is via physical tokens, 2FA, or also known as two-factor authentications. This is via mobile, smart cards, and etc. So the pros of this is that it enhances the security of the authentication process, and it's resistant to most digital breaches. The only problem is the physical risk or the device dependency it has. So if you lose this device, you will have a hard time to recover whatever you want to unlock in your system. And you're also burdened to it because you have to keep the device at all times if ever you want to complete the login process. And the last main factor that we use is inherence factor. It is based on what the physical features the user has to unlock the system. This process is done via biometrics, facial, voice recognition, hand scan, and many more. As long as it falls in line of what the user inherits physically with no device needed other than themselves. Basically, an example of this is your iPhone. iPhone, this could unlock via face recognition. So it's easy to set up. So that's the pros of it. It's very secure and fast to access because all it needs is your facial recognition. So that's one example of it. And it is very difficult to replicate, meaning that in case someone wants to give you a fake fingerprint or a fake photo and unlock your phone, very difficult to replicate. So the cons of it is it's very expensive. That's the only cons of it because it requires compatible hardware, and sometimes that hardware it needs cameras, sensors, all those things. And there are some bonus cons here, which it can be slightly inaccurate. I know it could be still a work in progress for most systems, but most importantly, it's always like at least 99% accurate. Now, other than this, is there other factors? Yes, there are other factors. I don't include them because these factors are mostly government use, but they can also be used in your system. However, it's not really a general purpose use. So the two factors that's being used in the government is behavior and location factors. And these factors are self-explanatory. So behavior factors, it determines the user's patterns in order to unlock or access the system via keystrokes, mouse movements, or anything whatever the user does in the system. And location factor, which is basically to determine the location of the user to unlock certain permissions. So let's say you're in QC, it unlocks this. You're in Pasig, it unlocks this. So that's one of the factors that it has. So speaking of factors, there's one factor that I was talking about, and it's called inherent. It was called possession factors, and I mentioned something along the lines of 2FA. Now, two-factor authentication, there are actually maybe two types of authentications from here, and it is either 2FA or MFA. MFA is multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to be explaining it from here. 2FA, also known as two-factor authentication, is simply the use of two factors to provide extra protection. So these factors can be knowledge, possession, inherence, combined together too. So those are the mostly used 2FA methods or combinations. While MFA, multi-factor authentication, is the use of two or more factors to provide superior security and extra protections. Now here are the pros and cons of it. 2FA pros is easy to set up than MFA and provides stronger security for the user. Now, the reason why it's easy to set up than MFA because MFA, if we're speaking about 2FA, we're talking about two-factor authentication. If we're going to talk about MFA in the same sentence, that's going to be three or more. So it is easy to set up than MFA because you're setting up only two factors, only two. Now the cons of this is that, as I said, if it's 2FA, it's less flexible, so it's only two factors, not more, and it's user burden still because if you're using a possession device and you lose that, then it will be hard to recover that. And I explained that on possession factors. Now, as for MFA, multi-factor authentication, it has superior security because you're using three or more factors. So, meaning more factors, more security. And it's flexible because you can take more than two factors. You can take more than two factors. You can maybe even add more. The only problem is that it's more complex than 2FA. You're going to be setting up inheritance. You're going to be setting up inherence. You're going to be setting up possession. You're going to be setting up knowledge, location, behavior. It's not user friendly, and you're also going to get authentication fatigue. Meaning, going through all the process of this, you're going to get tired of verifying the access to your system. So basically, in conclusion, authentication is the process of confirming the legitimacy of someone or something trying to access the system. Nowadays, people use 2FA while some use MFA to increase security and the protection of data. Now, we're done with authentication. Let's now head to access control. So, for access control, what is access control? Access control is referring to the process of regulating who can access resources or informations within the system. This ensures that only authorized users are granted entry or permission to access specific resources, data, or physical spaces. Now, what is it used for? Well, as I said, it is used to enforce security. So it's used to enforce security policies so that multiple users can have certain permissions that can also be monitored. So there's like a user activity log that administrators can access. It is also used to reduce damage from compromised accounts by limiting access and permissions from specific data. So there are types of access controls, and there are two types of access controls. The first one is physical access control. Let's go with that first. So this type of access control regulates the entry to physical spaces such as buildings, rooms, and etc. So basically, example of this is like servers. Using it uses methods like key cards or adding more security guards to those servers because this can be like a high security server in where there's important data. So there's government locations that have servers like these. The next one is digital access control. So this type of access control regulates the entry to digital resources like files, database, or networks using authentication methods and access control models. Now this is important because we're going to be explaining, since we already explained authentication methods, we're going to be explaining access control models. Now, as for access control models, we're going to be explaining there are four access control models. So we're going to be starting with the first one, and that is discretionary access control, DAC. This allows the owner of a resource to control who can access it and what permission they have. So basically, it is what the owner or administrator like it is what they decide, like who can read, who can write, who can execute this file in the file system. The second one is mandatory access control, MAC. So this allows access to resources that is determined by security labels assigned to both user and resources. So it is commonly used in environments where there are high levels of security, and it's mostly essential for government and military systems. And the next one, the third one, is role based access control, RBAC. This assigns access based on the user's role and is commonly used in organizations or companies. So let's say you work at a company, it's either going to be the employee manager or the IT administrator. So basically, these roles, they have predefined access permissions, and as such, they can be labeled and set differently according to the roles created. And the last one is attribute based access control. This uses multiple attributes such as users' characteristics, environmental conditions, or resource attributes, and it determines that access. It's more dynamic than RBAC, allowing for more granular control. So, overview on all of the access controls. Access control is a security technique that regulates who or what can view or use resources in a computing environment. And this is crucial since understanding these fundamentals can help safeguard data if ever there is something worth keeping. Hence, physical access controls are always there, or even digital access controls outside. So yeah, that's the end of this presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.